This is the Under the Ring Report, a weekly pro wrestling podcast. Now, here are the masters of armchair booking, John the Flesh Wound and Cousin Tom.
And welcome, wrestling fans. It's 2018, and here we are with the Under the Ring Report. How you doing, Tom?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing real well. Did you have yourself a good holiday?
I did. Like a kid in a candy store. Santa brought exactly what I wanted. So how was yours?
Very quiet, which is kind of what I enjoy, you know. Spent New Year's Eve New Year's Day watching wrestling, and, you know, it's been kind of that whole way since we've jumped into 2018. But you actually had a little fun over the weekend, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I love my house shows, and I actually got to attend a house show here that was, it's maybe an hour, 15-minute drive from where I live at.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they WWE put on a good show. It was the Raw brand house show. Took a lot of photos, took my 11-year-old son. He had a blast. He did make one funny comment, which will tie into what we're going to talk about later.
Okay.
There was one of the matches. It was Asuka, and it was real quiet during the match. So he starts stomping his foot, trying to, you know, and he's rattling the whole bleachers, trying to get people to clap. And he's like, "This is like a New Japan match. No one's clapping."
Now that's funny.
Kind of cracked up. Yeah.
That's really funny. He's kind of got that. And if folks haven't checked out our social media sites, you posted a video of Braun Strowman with Elias.
Oh, yeah. I guess I should set it up. You know, Elias come out and did his thing. And they had the stool set up, and everyone's waiting on the song. And he does his song. And if you listen to the song, I had a video up. He mentions that he'd like to punch all the kids in the face because they're annoying. And so that's what sets off Braun. So Strowman comes out, and so I wish I would have shot just a few seconds earlier, because he's like, "Hey, big man, don't you know? I was just having a little fun with the kids." He's like, "Tell you what, let's do a duet together." And then that led into starting in on Freebird, and Strowman pretty well telling him to get these hands and clocking him, which was fantastic. And that was one of the bigger pops of the night. So yeah, it was good. And then it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah. Well, as I say, you posted on Instagram, and then Braun Strowman actually reposted your video.
Yes. And my 14-year-old, who thinks he's a YouTube sensation, told me, he's like, "You know, the only bad thing is you didn't get credit when it went viral."
Doesn't matter, though.
I'm like, no. I'm like, but it's cool. The actual guy. Never posted it. So
over 100,000 people watched a video that you shot. I think that's pretty damn cool. And even more people keep watching it every day. So I thought that was pretty cool.
And I always love when there's viral videos and people in the comments are like, "I was there for that."
Yeah.
Well, you know, and it's like, well, yeah, I was there for that. I'm the one that shot it.
No shit. Well, I saw a few people say that on Twitter, too. They were reposting, you know, and retweeting the video like, "Hey, I got to go here." So I thought that was pretty cool that other folks that had been to the show were kind of bonding with you and noticing that they'd been at the same show. But this week's show, just kind of wanted to talk what we've been up to, you know. But the main thing we want to talk about is pretty much what everybody's been talking about for the last week and a half, and that's New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom 12. We both got a chance to watch it. We won't get into results and all that stuff because, you know what, there's people out there, that's what their podcasts are all about. You know, they're going to run down and tell you everything that happens, and that's cool. But I think it'd be kind of cool is just you and I talking, because we mostly watch a lot of American wrestling, you know? And I know we were talking before we started, but I think both of us, this is the first time we've watched a full New Japan pay-per-view. We've watched matches, things on YouTube. You've watched a lot of Access TV too, right?
Yeah, but see, the thing with the Access TV is it's been, you know, compartmentalized, I guess is the word. You know, they, instead of getting the full pay-per-view experience, they're chopping it up into hour segments. So you either get one match or you get a couple matches, and then you have the commentary added in. You don't get Don Callis and Kevin Kelly. But you get exposure to it. You just don't get to see the full exposure.
Gotcha. Well, it's kind of a watered down version, maybe. I know I've watched a couple matches here and there that's been on that channel, and I guess they Americanize it as much as they can, it seems like.
Yeah, well, and the other thing I noticed too is everyone has a gimmick, whether you're in Japan or the States. All wrestlers have some type of gimmick that they're trying to get over to the crowd.
Yeah.
The one thing I noticed is when you have Jim Ross on commentary, there were a few times where he wasn't familiar with the gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
And so he mentioned, he's like, I'm not sure why the guy has a teddy bear. Well, the guy always, that's his part of his thing. And that's one thing I've noticed before, where when they come in and don't follow the product as closely, then it loses a little bit. But for the most part, if you're just trying to get people exposed to it, I think access has been great for New Japan.
Mm-hmm. Well, but you are right, though, in that point, because the announcers are the storytellers. That's how we're supposed to view the product that they're putting out there. And I agree with what you're saying because, I subscribed to New Japan World for a month. And after watching Wrestle Kingdom and a few other things, I wanted to see or hear, really, Jim Ross doing some stuff. So I actually went back and watched the G1 from earlier this year.
Oh, yeah.
And even though he was there live, you can tell the disconnect. And I like Jim Ross. He's a great announcer. But I really feel that, Kevin Kelly, Don Callis, they should be doing that voiceover stuff for anything showing up in the United States because they're there. They know what's going on week in and week out with that product. And Jim kind of shows up, does his thing for a couple times, and he's out the door. And it's very obvious because I was watching a match watched with the Young Bucks, and he was talking about how they did all these super kicks. Why are they doing them? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, that's their gimmick. That's part of their shtick.
That's the super kick party.
Yeah. And he wasn't quite giving that transition in. And it was funny how when he was familiar with a wrestler, like when Billy Gunn was wrestling, he was very familiar and had all of his things down for Billy Gunn. But it was when he wasn't familiar, it was hard for him to kind of give you the backstory of those guys. So, but let's
be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Ross, I love Jim Ross for everything he's done. But Jim Ross was brought in because his name is Jim Ross. And Mark Cuban and Access knew if they got Jim Ross to do some commentary, you're going to pull in some viewers, just name recognition alone.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But now, having said that, the only thing I had seen in New Japan before always had Jim Ross commentary, or I never had got to see a live event with Don Callis and Kevin Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
I was blown away.
They're really good. Yeah.
They are really good.
Yeah.
And, some of the move sets and different, I don't know all the finishers of the guys. Most of the guys I know who they are, but I didn't.
Well, I mean, we both kind of went in blind. We have a little backstory. I mean, for the most part, you know who Okada is. You know who Naito is. You know about the Bullet Club, Kenny Omega. But it's some of these other guys that show up that you're not quite sure. You're not quite how their story, which I think is kind of cool how we can kind of experience this in a whole nother way. But the first thing I want to talk about for me, and I don't know what you thought, but I was really amazed, even the very first, the Royal Rumble match they did for the pre-show, how quiet the crowd was. And it wasn't because they were upset or anything, but It was amazing to hear this large Tokyo Dome and hardly anyone making noise while these guys were performing.
Well, the one thing I noticed in Japan, and I've come to appreciate it more after I've watched it and kind of watched for it, is that it'll be quiet, and then you have the two guys in the ring, and if the referee tells them to break and someone acts like they're not going to break clean, they'll start to boo.
Yeah.
But when you break clean, even if you're supposed to be the heel, they'll applaud.
Oh, yeah.
They appreciate. And the thing I like about New Japan is it's New Japan sport. It's treated as a sport.
Mm-hmm.
It's billed as a fight.
Well, what I loved was as these guys at the end of the match were finished, they were bringing ice packs and stuff to put on them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, there's a press conference.
Uh-huh.
There's a press conference leading up. There's they beforehand they come out in their suits and they have a photo op.
Yeah.
And, it's completely set up different than what anything you've been exposed to here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
The crowd is super, super into it, but it's just the complete opposite of what you're used to because no one's trying to throw a beach ball around. No one's trying to get a chant around that's just to entertain themselves. They're there to watch the product.
Well, and that's the one thing that you had right there. The crowd is not trying to get themselves over the talent. They're there, and when they cheer, it's because someone has done something that is really entertaining and they know they've done it. The other thing I liked, there's no mic talking. You know what I mean? We're not going to cut a 20-minute promo, then wrestle for 5 minutes and then go back. I mean, most of those matches are 30 minutes or longer, depending.
Or longer.
Yeah. And I enjoyed that because there was just real wrestling, and they seemed to take, and I'll just take the Young Bucks, their match kind of for example. Some of the stuff they did was kind of over the top comical, but the crowd appreciated it. And I don't know if that would get over here, but the people loved it. I mean, kind of a perfect example is someone who's gotten a lot of grief, Joey Ryan, you know, and how he wrestles. He gets a lot of grief, but I think that is kind of the same stuff they do in New Japan, not as over the top as what he does, but but I think that kind of wrestling is great because it kind of makes fun of itself a little bit, but it's entertaining, and I like that.
And the Young Bucks, that's what they're known for.
Yeah,
you can tell they're having fun. I mean, also Marty Scurll, which I love Marty Scurll's gimmick, the villain.
Yep.
You know, when he yells out the move before he does it, super kick, and then he super kicked somebody, and then he yelled out his next move, and he did that. And then in the match, he yelled something out, then he didn't do them, and Don Callis was like, oh, he tricked him with that one, just that's all part of their gimmick. But some of those guys, like you were saying, the bell rings, they all walk out, and then they wait in their corners, and it's go time. And that was what, 5 hours of wrestling?
Six if you count the pre. Yeah,
that's right. 6 hours of wrestling with no promos.
No. And it was funny too, because Thursday I was like, all right, I purchased it early Wednesday. Well, Wednesday night I purchased it, and I was like, all right, I'm going to try and stay up. And 2:00 hit, and I looked at the clock, went back to sleep. But I woke up about 4 a.m. or so, and that was right around the time when I actually got to see Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho. So that was actually perfect. I caught that match, and then I came home, from work and hit the rest of them, watched the whole thing in its entirety. But I'll tell you what, Chris Jericho has to be given a salute, because I think he's turned a lot of people on to New Japan. They've known about New Japan, but no one's really said, I want to see so-and-so, because Kenny Omega's awesome, but if you wait, you can catch it on YouTube and get the highlights. But I think this is the first time people in droves came out to watch Wrestle Kingdom. And I mean, on the Squared Circle on Reddit, everyone was talking about it. People on Twitter, everybody was talking about it. And it directly is because people wanted to see Jericho. And I'll tell you what, a uncensored Chris Jericho heel is the best Chris Jericho persona, I think.
Yeah, that press conference where he was uncensored, it kind of threw me back for a second, because you're not used to seeing that.
No.
And he's giving everyone the finger and telling them, this is what I think of Japan. I'm like,
it's like F you, yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah. And I was almost, it's hard to shock people anymore, but that's what it was like, because you don't see that here. And you haven't seen anything close to that since the TV14 era went away on Raw, and they went to PG.
Well, and they couldn't even do some of the stuff that he was doing, He could be over the top, but he couldn't be busted open. He couldn't use swear words and flip the camera off. Those were things that even in the Attitude Era you wouldn't get away with.
No, yeah, and I'm with you. I was looking forward to Wrestle Kingdom already. Yeah. But with Jericho, find out Jericho was on it, it was just like, oh, there's no way I'm missing this. I've got to see it now. There's no way.
And I have to say, Kenny Omega is a phenomenal wrestler, but it was kind of refreshing to see him be involved in just pretty much a brawl, because that one spot off the top of the ropes through the announcer table, holy crap, was that crazy.
Where he cleared the railing and hit the announcer table.
Yeah. and I mean, and Jericho even made it better when he was sitting there beating up Red Shoes and beating up his son. And I mean, those are things, too, that in the WWE, unless it's a guest referee, they don't really do much to touch the referees and stuff. But this was all put together. And, there was a few moments where, they were trying to count him out, even though it was a no DQ match. So I think there might have been a little confusion.
I liked how he pushed him and he's like, it's no DQ. It's no DQ. You mentioned the ring and things. That was one of my points I was going to bring up on comparing the States to New Japan. Well, when the ring is set up in New Japan, they've got the mats outside the ring, and then they have the little iron gate that goes around, which is how rings used to be in the 80s and early 90s.
Very true.
That we grew up with. But then at the Tokyo Dome, it's like they have another AstroTurf area that goes another 30 feet all the way around beyond that. So if you're front row Tokyo Dome, you're really sitting like second or third section back
Yeah.
at a Raw show.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
So you're not on top of the action.
no, not at all.
And I wonder if what that is. I mean, it might just how it's set up, because I thought it was odd too, is how the announcer booths were actually behind the first rails. And then there was the announcers, and then there was another rail, and then you finally saw the audience. So I thought that was kind of weird also.
You know, with the announcer table, when like Omega went to that announcer table, one thing I noticed, they didn't clear anything out beforehand. There were monitors there. They were the old monitors, the old big metal monitors.
Yeah.
And I thought, how in the world did that guy not hit one of those things?
Mm-hmm.
And then what I liked was Kevin Kelly and Callis. They didn't know if they were in on the air. They had no video feed, and they kept talking, which was good. You're supposed to do that, but they went another 10 minutes without knowing if
they were on the air or not. Yeah, I liked how that was kind of set up, and it kind of brought you back to kind of like you were saying, like older wrestling back in the day. The other thing was kind of cool too, and I don't know if you noticed, and you might not as much at Wrestle Kingdom, but I did go and watch the New Year's Dash the next day, but they have a lot of interaction with the announced team. You know, the Young Bucks, Omega, all those guys, when they leave, they just walk right up and start talking to them, which is something that doesn't happen much anymore. What else kind of stands out to you as a major difference between what we watch here in the States and after watching a whole pay-per-view in New Japan?
Well, I think I was overthinking it a little bit, thinking of physical differences as far as like with the venue and, the railing and the space between the competitor or the spectators. But then I got thinking about it and just kind of simplified it. In-ring action is a big difference between what you get in America. And like the Ring of Honor guys, we're familiar then with ring in the States.
Yeah.
We know what they're going to do. But the Japanese wrestlers that a lot of people aren't exposed to, that style, which, has, the strong style, which since Nakamura's come to WWE, people are more familiar with. But the way they will push boundaries and just tag each other. I mean, there's no pulling punches. They're tagging each other, not on all occasions, but there's certain parts of the match. That's different. And then I also it's kind of like some of their matches can be a throwback to the 70s, to the old NWA, the chain wrestling, kind of telling the story that, the Okada match with Naito, there was probably 15 neck breakers in that match.
Yeah.
Where they just kept working it, working one body part over and over and over. And it makes me, from my childhood memories, makes me, harken back to Bret Hart. He always, did something to the leg, drag him over to the rope, dropped his body on the knee, worked the leg over so he could throw him in a sharpshooter, and you knew it was coming. So that's one of the things I think is, they have that two different styles that they kind of merge into one, which you don't see in the current product as much anymore.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, to me, is kayfabe is alive and well in New Japan, because that audience, they feel like what's going on is real and what's happening here and there. And you know what I mean? It's not so much, I think that in the United States, we've become so jaded because we know everything. You know what I mean? We know, when we see a match come up, we know who's going to win because that's what's going on from here and here. And the perfect example is the main event. Everyone going into that main event thought Naito was going to win that main event because his story had led up to that throughout the whole year. And they thought it was his time. And you can see towards the end when they're having, at the end of the matches and they're talking. And like I said, I had to wait later and go back and see the translations. But it was funny as I watched it, you could see all his supporters very downtrodden walk out and leave because everyone felt that was his time. And, because the stories had been told to say, okay, now it is time. He's going to, because Okada has been booked as a very strong champion, especially with his matches with Omega and everything else. But they thought this was the time for Naito. And that's the one thing I get is that kayfabe is alive and well. And you know what? I think sometimes that's a good thing and maybe hurts a lot of us United States fans because we know too much and we can't just suspend reality and just enjoy a story being told.
Oh, absolutely. There's something to be said for suspending reality. When you're a young kid and you're buying into everything, you're completely enthralled. And as you get older and you become more jaded to everything, it loses that effect. And it really takes something special to make it come back again, especially when you know the outcome, or you think you know the outcome.
Well, to me, here's a perfect example would be this. We all hate on Roman Reigns. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I know you're guilty of it. And it is mostly wrestling fans that are older who hate on him, because you've talked to me before that your son likes him. I know other folks that I know who have young kids. They like Roman Reigns. Now, take Hulk Hogan and the way he was booked in the 80s, but give us the internet, give us the information we have. And truthfully, Hulk Hogan was booked exactly as Roman Reigns. Hulk Hogan was not a good wrestler. Hulk Hogan was god-awful. If you talk to wrestlers that wrestled during that time, they talk that they thought, well, Nikolai Volkov, which I'd interviewed, he talked about how they felt Hulk Hogan was killing the business. He was that bad. But that's the thing. Vince pushed him to the sky, and it worked. And I think that if you had taken Hulk Hogan and been able to drop him into this generation and have him pushed exactly as Roman Reigns, you know, it's the exact same thing. And if you would have taken Roman Reigns and put him in the 80s, none of us would have said a damn thing. We would just said, thank you, Vince, because we weren't smart. We didn't know what was going on. We had no idea about the backstage politics or anything. We were just happy to have someone on our TV that we were supposed to cheer. And we would have kept doing that. And I think now we know so much that's going on. We become very jaded. And that's why I kind of enjoyed New Japan. And part of it, too, I think, is we both kind of went in with no expectations besides the Jericho and Omega match. You know, we know about the other guys, but I can honestly say I don't follow New Japan that closely. When I hear someone say, oh, hey, this is a match you need to watch, I'll go look it out and take a good look and see what it's about. But I don't follow it that much. So
yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. The big matches I follow. When I know they're having something like Wrestle Kingdom, I make sure, try to keep track of what's going on. Yeah. Thanks to Twitter, you're always in touch with what's going on. Yeah. But I'm not a diehard New Japan person. Now that I've been exposed more to the product, I'm more apt to go back and find it again. Well, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, because you now know that it's likely, it's a good difference. I now know what I'm going to expect, what I'm walking into.
Well, and it's nice to know that there is an alternative out there and that they're trying to reach a larger audience. I mean, we've all seen matches over the years of New Japan. And I mean, during the time AJ Styles was there, even when Finn Balor was there, we all saw matches, some of the stuff that happened there, Nakamura. Right. But they're making a concerted effort to reach out to the American fans, you know, with the G1 last year in LA. They've already promised again they're going to be in the United States this year. You know, and we talked before about Access TV, and there's talk that Mark Cuban wants to expand on the amount of New Japan wrestling on Access TV, giving it a platform here. And besides that, now with the New Japan World streaming service, I mean, $9, and you have a complete library and all the stuff that's happening current at your fingertips, just like the WWE Network. So it's nice to have an alternative.
I'm completely for them coming to the States and exposing more people, because nothing does better than with competition. Yes. Competition builds everything. Without competition, people get stale and old and stagnant, and it's hard to keep things fresh. Yeah. And with a competitor, they're not going to come in and be Monday night WC Nitro off the bat. But if it's something that pushes the WWE juggernaut to maybe think about their storylines or think about some matches a little deeper than just, hey, let's throw this together and this together and see what happens, I'm all for it. I think it could do nothing but help.
Well, and the thing I think that's nice is, for older wrestling fans, it's a nice alternative, because you know what? WWE's always going to have the kids. They are really good at that. They know how to do programming for kids. You know, they got away from it there for a while during the Attitude Era, but when they put that machine behind that, kids want the games, they want the toys, they have to have everything. They want you to take them to the events. So WWE's always going to have that, and I think as older fans, we kind of resent the fact that they don't aim their product as much to us, even though we grew up with it and we were under that spell for such a long time, and now we all are looking for alternatives, and I think New Japan does offer something for other people out there, and I'm glad it's out there. I was really impressed by watching one of my first full pay-per-views from New Japan, and I think I'm looking forward to seeing some more.
Yeah, I am too. I need to go back and catch the Dash. I haven't watched the Dash, but that I plan on going back this week and catching up on. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one, and I know just from what I've seen, we haven't seen the last of Chris Jericho in New Japan.
No, we haven't. Like I said, I watched the Dash. There was that. There was the teased tension between Omega and Cody. So there was a lot of things that came out of the Dash that were worth watching. And I've kind of started going backwards through 2017 and going back and catching, not just the match, but trying to watch the whole event and getting more ideas. Like I said, I watched the G1 event because I saw bits and pieces, but I hadn't watched the whole thing. And I'm just kind of working my way back and try to watch everything that happened in the last year. But overall, I'm with you, man. I see New Japan in a whole different light, and I like what they're selling. They're doing a good job.
Oh, yeah. I wholeheartely agree. They have a new fan in me, and I've told a few people about it. And, I still get a few people who look at me like, wait, you watch wrestling? you get that first shock, and then you mention there's Japanese pro wrestling? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I got some weird looks when I'm like, yeah, I woke up at 3 a.m. and like, what the hell is wrong with you? But hey, it's, you know what? As wrestling fans, you're always looking for something, and when there's a buzz, we got to give Chris Jericho credit, because without the buzz he put out there, I don't think I would have been as hyped to spend the money to see it live. I probably would have watched it later, but I think he pulled me in enough that I was curious to see what was going on. Once again, make sure, folks, check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're all over. It's UTRR Podcast. We'll be back next week. You're on the Under the Ring Report.
This is Dory Funk Jr., and you're listening to the Under the Ring Report.
Follow the Under the Ring Report on Twitter at UTRR Podcast. You can subscribe to the Under the Ring Report on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, or visit undertheringreport.com. Thanks for listening to the Under the Ring Report.